How the right marketing strategy will help your law firm soar with Gary Musler, episode 198. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and my guest today, Gary Musler, is the founder and CEO of Big Mouth Marketing. And I'm excited to have Gary on this show because I'll tell you a few things about Gary. First of all, the first time I met him, I really liked his personality. He just connected with me in a way that told me that he's one of those people that just cares about you in the way that he was talking to me and the way that he was sharing with me. Then, as we were talking in the green room today before this recording, he started to give me feedback on some of the previous podcast episodes I had released, which made me realize that he clearly has been listening to the show, which obviously makes me feel really good, but also tells me that he's done his research, that he is very thought out with what he does. And that's why I think you should pay attention to this conversation, because somebody like that is going to have a wealth of knowledge to share with you. And I'm excited to bring him here on the show. Now, Gary is a passionate, results-oriented marketer. And when he's not marketing, he is going to be swimming, cycling, jogging, hiking, basically anything to keep himself young. And I'm excited to have him here on the show. Now, before I bring Gary on, I'm just going to take a moment and you'll hear a word from our sponsors who help make this show possible. And we'll be right back with Gary. Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. Hashtag delegate your way to freedom. Learn more at www.getstaffedup.com/VIP. As an attorney, you want to get more done for your clients while converting leads into new business. But your days are filled with drafting documents, meetings, court appearances, speaking with opposing counsel, and making sure no one falls through the cracks. This leaves you with little time to focus on your business. Meet Lawmatics, the most powerful client intake and marketing automation CRM built for the modern law practice. With Lawmatics, you can win more business, impress clients, and be more efficient. Go to www.lawmatics.com to book your personalized demo and learn how Lawmatics can help you grow your firm. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code PROFITLAW100. That's PROFITLAW100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Well, Gary, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Moshe. I appreciate it. And, to be honest, after an introduction like that, I just want to say thank you. Good night, everybody. And see you next time. That was
Yep.
wonderful. Thank
Job done, right?
you.
Well, Gary, people want to know who is this guy, Gary Musler. So give us some background. Let me know a little bit about your journey and how you got to owning a marketing agency that helps law firms grow.
Jeez. It's funny too, because how I got here is a lot like the path that you took, right? And listening to your experience, you had no idea that you were going to end up where you were today, right? I mean, completely
Absolutely.
accidental. And those are the best stories, aren't they? I mean, you had no idea what you were going to do, but you followed your skill set and it landed you in the perfect place at the right time. And I think that's kind of like what happened to me. And I say that because originally I was marketing for my own practice, which was basically a financial service and estate planning practice. And it was around the late 90s when, the internet started gaining traction, and the whole idea of being able to market online seemed like a good idea, right? I mean, I liked the idea of being able to just do work behind a screen, not shower or dress if I didn't feel like. So it kind of appealed to me. And what was interesting too at the time is everybody said what I was thinking about doing wouldn't work. And fortunately, that was one of the times that I didn't listen to everybody, because as you know, here we are all these years later, and the thought of the internet not being an effective place to market any service is kind of ridiculous. But so I started having great success marketing my own services, and we got really big actually. And we started managing data for a lot of the affiliate networks. And so I started doing a lot of emailing. As a matter of fact, a 500 million emails a month. And so I used to get some hate email. And one day I got a call from an attorney. And for the attorneys listening out there, you should know that for non-attorneys to get a phone call from an attorney freaks us out, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, oh my God, who's complaining about their email now? And much to my surprise, pleasantly, I wasn't in any kind of trouble, but the attorney had heard about the work that I did. I was one of the largest lead providers for the online universities. And so I kind of had a following. And what that attorney actually wanted was help marketing her practice. So I was pretty full of myself at the time, Moshe, and I said, sure, no problem. I am the lead king. That's what I do. And um, took her on as a client and was quickly humbled. It failed. It was an epic, epic failure. But just like I think most people can relate to this, is sometimes failures are our best teachers, right? And we get the best traction from them.
Yeah, I'm
And
actually going to amend that to say all the time failure is our best teacher. I
yeah,
can't I can't think of any failure in my life that didn't ultimately end up being a lesson that moved me further along my journey.
yeah, if you pay attention, right, and you realize what's happening, there's lessons. And the big takeaway that I got was that marketing for attorneys is very, very different than any other profession. And I say that because if you think about it, what do most marketing companies do? They market to people's desires. And for the most part, I don't know too many people that desire to hire an attorney, right? I mean, typically, if you need to hire an attorney, you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
Uh, because let's face it, attorneys solve problems, very real and very serious problems. So you have to have a completely different approach. And I think a lot of times that people don't realize that you have to really get into the mind of the person that you're talking to. There's no desire to hire an attorney.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And not only do you have to understand what their pain points are, but you have to understand how to speak to them in that language, how to highlight what they're feeling, because they don't know that they're feeling it. They don't know that that's where they are. And this happens in any area of law. It doesn't matter if it's family law where somebody's going through a divorce and there's an extremely emotional event, or criminal law where similarly they're in hot water and they feel like their world's crumbling around them, or if it's estate planning where they're just preparing for the future, because everybody in whatever state they're in, they have a challenge, and the key is to recognize what that challenge is and to be able to speak to them in their language in a way that they say, oh, this person's in my head, they know what's going on.
Yeah. And that just brings you back to that old adage, you need to get somebody's attention, interest, desire right in order to get them to take action. And there's no better way to do that than what you just said. And that is to enter the conversation that's already going on in that consumer's mind. Because let's face it, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right?
Right.
And to understand that avatar, right? And to be able to speak in a language that resonates with them and offers them that value and that lifeline that they're looking for is sadly missed by too many firms out there.
Absolutely. So you had this attorney who you served and did a miserable job doing that. What
Yes.
happened after that? How did you get back to lawyers, or did you persist and persevere with this attorney until you figured it out?
No, so obviously, I think what the only way to make lemonade out of lemons is to figure out what happened, and even still to this day, I like doing postmortems when something doesn't go right, because you don't learn too much when things are going well. But from that, really understanding how to implement the problem first approach, really helping to, number one, really identify what the problem is. And then the second element is to quickly let the prospect know that you are the solution to their problem. And that was the genesis for everything thereafter, because it's really never just one thing, right? Meaning, when I think about marketing, I think of a wheel, and the more spokes that you have in the wheel, the sturdier the wheel and the sturdier your marketing. And, I mentioned to you before that I had been in this space for a very long time. And when you've been marketing for a long time online, you have experienced a lot of ups and downs as Google has changed the algorithms and such. So when you bring it back to understanding, what the problem is and presenting yourself as the solution to the problem, you have to make sure that you're addressing that person where they are, and then continue that experience all the way through. That's just the beginning of the funnel. You talked about how attorneys are going to have to start producing more content, for a number of reasons. But I think sometimes the message gets lost and people start thinking, content for the sake of content is enough, but they rarely understand or properly coordinate. And it's really because it's not their fault. It's not easy to think that we have all these different avenues. We want as many spokes in as possible, right? And there needs to be commonality between that, right? You need to have that commitment and consistency of dialogue, thought, feeling, and where you're leading them to. Because if you're not going to be consistent with your voice, well, think about it. It's really no different than a personal relationship, right? If the person that you're trying to have a relationship is not committed like you are and not as consistent, and whether it's their behavior or who they are as a person, it's really hard to have a lasting relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love a few things that you shared. So I'm going to take a step back, try to remember each one that I wanted to highlight. But the first thing that you shared that I want to go back and highlight for our listeners in case they miss this golden nugget is you don't learn much when things are going well. And I just want to turn that saying that you shared, which it's a quotable. I'm sure that we're gonna turn into a social media infographic for you. But if you're listening to this and you're in the space right now where things just don't seem to be going right for you, where everything you do seems to be not producing the results that you want, recognize that you are in the best place possible for your success. Because if everything's going well for you, then at some point you're going to hit a challenge, you're going to hit a bump in the road, you're not going to know how to address it. You're not going to know how to get past it. But if you're going through the muck right now, you're learning along the way. And as you're learning, you're becoming a better attorney, a better firm owner, and you're going to make better decisions. And it's all a growing process. It's kind of like when a baby learns how to walk or when your child learns how to ride a bicycle. Think about anything that you had to learn when you had to fall, you had to get cuts and scrapes, you had to get bumps and bruises, and you had to get hurt along the way in order to achieve and master that activity. And building a successful law firm is no different. So I wanted to point that out. And then the other thing that you mentioned is the spokes in the wheel, and you need to have as many spokes or avenues coming in. And I just want to dive into that a little bit deeper, because if we think about it from the perspective of our potential client, and we start to ask the question of what is my client asking? Like when they're sitting there in their pajamas at 2:00 in the morning, and because they can't sleep, because they're bothered by something, what is it that they're putting into Google and searching for? What is the question that they're asking? Because if you approach it from there, what is the question they're asking? You can have a series of blog posts that answer that question, one building on the next, building on the next. And then when they discover you and they find that you're talking to them, you're answering that question, they then go and read the next article. They read the next article. Before they know it, they've consumed 4 or 5 of your pieces of content. They are hooked. They want to find out, how are you going to solve their problem for them? What's the next step? And you have to have this very clear path of breadcrumbs for them to take. Because if you just try to put a billboard out there and hope they're going to call, that will work for some. But if you really want to get people who, when they call your office, they're ready to sign on the dotted line before they even talk to you, then you have to have this journey that you take them on to solve their problem way before they ever ring your phone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, you bring up a good point. And when you talk about having that consistency of content, I know you and we think of content as a lot of different things, and I think it's important, to let your listeners know that, content means written, content means audio, it means visual. It's all of these different things, because at the end of the day, we know that the attribution points are much greater than they ever were before, right? And you don't know. Listen, I consume your data. I mean, your content on my morning walks. It's hard to consume all the information that we have to. So, you made it easy for me because I'm able to listen, right? And then, there are things that I like to do at night where I'm consuming written stuff in the evening to help me fall asleep. So by crossing platforms and channels, and this is what I think law firm owners really want to pay attention to, is that they know that they need to produce content, but there needs to be that synergy and that relationship. Like what you're doing on your podcast is related to your newsletters, is related to your posts, is related to your email, everything is there because you're demonstrating. If you think about it, all throughout the process, you want to demonstrate as many of the 6 laws of influence and persuasion as possible. And commitment and consistency is, the cornerstone, right? I mean, if you don't have that, it's hard to build on the other elements.
Gary, what are those 6?
Uh, uh, well, sometimes people call them 7, but I lump commitment and consistency as one. Then there's social proof, authority, liking, scarcity, and the law of reciprocity. And, it's interesting because I know you're probably familiar with Robert Cialdini, but anybody who's not read his books, I couldn't recommend them more. I just love them, and I revisit them as often as possible. And in case he's listening, I'd love to do lunch or dinner, Robert, sometime.
If Robert's listening to my podcast, I've made it, right?
But, no one factor is strong enough to result in the conclusion or the result that we want, right? But the more of them that you include in your funnel or your journey, the greater your odds of getting the result that you want. So, that's probably, one of the biggest takeaways, that we do. And I want to encourage everybody else to do is to follow that guideline of whatever you're producing, to make sure you're demonstrating those things so that there's that commitment and consistency. So, if somebody has engaged you because at the top of the funnel, they entered through Google AdWords, but then you're going to cultivate them and build a relationship with them on Instagram and Facebook and other places, there needs to be that continuity all the way through. It's kind of like probably no different than, we're all attracted to certain actors and actresses or comedians, and it's because of their style and their consistency, right? And it just is, these things are logical, but sometimes we look right past what's logical.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because there's a lot of attorneys out there who are like, I don't want to put my personal life out there on a pedestal. I don't want people to have access to my Instagram or access to my Facebook. And they go about creating business accounts for these and running their social media for their law firm from those places. Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. #delegate your way to freedom. Learn more at www.getstaffedup.com/VIP. As an attorney, you want to get more done for your clients while converting leads into new business. But your days are filled with drafting documents, meetings, court appearances, speaking with opposing counsel, and making sure no one falls through the cracks. This leaves you with little time to focus on your business. Meet Lawmatics, the most powerful client intake and marketing automation CRM built for the modern law practice. With Lawmatics, you can win more business, impress clients, and be more efficient. Go to www.lawmatics.com to book your personalized demo and learn how Lawmatics can help you grow your firm. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. And you're certainly entitled to do that, but I think that you're missing the boat with how to use social for building your business if you're doing that. Because when somebody's checking you out as an attorney, they want to know who you are as a person. They want to know if they can trust you, if you're gonna be there for them. And they look that, when they're looking on social, they're not looking for more content on the information they're looking for. They want to know validation of who it is that they're about to call, or who is it that they just met. And if you're hiding those things and all you have is the facade, it's no different than when you bring them into the fancy conference room. They don't get a taste of what it's like to deal with you. They don't get to see what the future is, and it makes it harder for them to make the decision. So I'm of the opinion that you should make your social media public. If you don't want them to see that you have kids, then don't use your social media to post about your kids, or be really careful about your privacy settings. Make some posts public, make some posts private. But the reality is that they should be able to get some idea of who you are in other areas of your life when they check you out on social. Think about how college kids, or potential college kids, high school kids, are being told, hey, don't be careful what you post on social, because college admission advisors, that the people who are making the decision about whether to accept you, they're checking out your social media. And if they see that you're at a party drinking alcohol, or if they see that you're using profanity or you have inappropriate posts, you're going to seal the deal on a rejection letter rather than getting into the school that you want. And you're no different as an attorney trying to get somebody to take you on, to hire you. Sometimes we think that we're allowing them to work with us, but it's not true. The client is making the decision. It's not the other way around. Sure, you can say no to a client. I don't want to work with you. And that's probably a good idea if they are the wrong fit. But ultimately, the client is making the decision on who they're going to work with. And you have to give them the tools, the ammunition they need to be able to do that.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about that is I agree with you. Yet, when you think about culturally, that's kind of a big shift. And you're probably not old enough to remember this, but there was a time when there was almost a mandate to separate your personal life from your professional life, right? I mean, never did the two meet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably a pretty hard and fast rule, probably until the internet did start coming about and making a difference. And then we went from keeping our private lives kind of secret to putting it all out there. And I think you're right that in today's day and age, when you think about the names that we all know, all the celebrities, and how they all have personal brands. People want to do business with people now, not just brands. So I think what you just said is 100% accurate. But what people want to do, I think, or should be doing, is not only being careful with what they put out there, but remember who's coming there and why they're doing it. In other words, don't just do it to do it, but to have a strategy that that goes across all the platforms that you're working.
Exactly. And it's about finding the right mix of inspiration and personal and a little bit about your own journeys with different parts of your aspects of your life. But you don't have to put it all out there. If you're going through a divorce, you don't have to post about that on social if you don't want to.
Mhm.
But if you think that it's going to be helpful for people to know who you are, then you put out a thoughtful post about how you're dealing with some of the challenges that you're going through, and make it upbeat and optimistic, not oh, I'm going to kill him kind of post. So you have to have that filter and that finesse to get it right, to have the right social media presence. And I'm standing here behind the microphone talking about what it needs to be. I'm far from where I need to be with a social presence. It hasn't been a focal point for me. So for me, it's less about being strategic, and it's more about I'm just using social like a regular consumer most of the time. And sometimes, we're purposely putting content out there, but the reality is that until I have somebody to manage my social media and to help me with that strategy, it's not something that I want to focus on. It's not something I want to spend my time on. I'd rather spend my focus on trying to figure out how to put out better content with the podcast, how to, get the perfect next event set up for my audience. So you have to decide where your efforts need to go. It's not a one size fits all answer. And this, I want to turn back to you, Gary. How does somebody navigate where their efforts should go? This is something that I ask many marketers. The challenge that law firm owners have when they go and they're searching for a marketer to work with is they're not a marketer. They don't have the strategy. They don't know what they need. And then they'll go and they'll talk to marketer X, and marketer X specializes in SEO. So marketer X is going to say, hey, you need an SEO strategy, and here's what we're going to do to implement that. And we're going to do XYZ. It's going to cost you X amount a month. And, your results are going to take 6 to 12 months, but you're going to have business coming through the yin yang with it. And then you go to marketer Y, and marketer Y says, oh, you want rapid results, you need to have paid advertising, you need Google pay-per-click, and you need to run Facebook ads. So we're going to do that for you. Don't waste your time on SEO. That's not till you reach a certain point. We're going to do this. And then you go to the third one, and he's like, oh, you got to do radio, TV, billboard placements so that everybody knows who you are. Don't waste your time with all the other stuff. They're not looking on the internet for you anyway, right? So how does a law firm owner navigate this journey and figuring out where should their efforts be, but whether it's their time or their money or a combination of the two, when there's so much mixed messages in the marketplace?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the question of the age. I mean, that's hitting the nail on the head, because, gosh, everybody is right? Meaning, like, going back to the circle, the wheel with the spokes, you want to have all of those things, but you need to be strategic and realistic. And also, I think I want to say slow down, meaning my experience, and maybe yours too, is, a firm owner gets frustrated. They want more business coming in the door, or maybe it's on the operational side. They want things to improve. And, they're, let's face it, most attorneys are A personalities, right? Successful, hard drivers. And when they make up their mind to do something, they want to do it. But, sometimes taking a step back is really important, right? So there's a couple of things that I always like to remind people, and I'm going to borrow that line from Stephen Covey, and begin with the end in mind, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And so if we begin with the end in mind, what do we know? We know that we want basically three things. We want to have a method for attracting our ideal client. We want to make sure that that ideal client provides us with referrals, right? And reviews. So now we begin saying, okay, we know this is what we want. What are the different ways to accomplish it? Should I be doing PPC? Should I be doing LSA, SEO, Facebook, LinkedIn, offline, emailing? The answer is, yep, probably yes to all those things, right? But now it begins, you have to take a look at, your starting point, and you have to be realistic. What are my assets? And by assets, I don't mean just financial. I mean, what are my marketing assets? What's my message? What is the conversation that I want to have? And you have to realize that for the people who have different practice areas, those are all different conversations. Those are all different avatars. Those are all different ways that you may want to go to market. So you sit back and you take a look at what all your different options are. And then you really have to understand who you are, who your firm is, what is that brand, because it's that brand and that messaging that you're going to bring to each one of those at the appropriate time based on what you have available to you now. So, for the person who says you got to have SEO, yep, they probably should, right? But should that come before going after some of the low hanging fruit? Typically not. So what we always like to do is just map things out. These are the things that you need to do. They all require money. If somebody had an endless bottomless pit, implement everything all at the same time, and then watch things explode. Too much could happen and you might regret that. So being strategic and understanding where you are with your utilization of the current staff that you have and what you need to do. So it's never the same thing, but I guess I just want to go back to kind of what I said. Slow down at the beginning, like map everything out. We're going to start with newsletter. We're going to cultivate the people, and then we're going to, work on our reviews, and then, all the way down the road, but map it out. Take a look at budget, take a look at the KPIs. Those KPIs will tell you when it's time to implement those things. And it's just a question of then implementing. And I want to share one other thing. I, as you and I were talking, that I think everything is connected and related. And there are some companies that play well together, and we have a number of companies in the space that it's fun to work with. And sure, you'd like to have all the business, but it's also great to interact with people. And I think understanding and really spending time looking at the reviews, talking, it should be a long-term decision. So take your time making and choosing that marketing partner.
Yeah, and something that you said made me realize that we actually need to start even earlier than where you're starting, because so many law firms have multiple practice areas that they are calling their practice area. And that usually is not because when you started your law firm, you said, hey, I'm going to start a law firm and I'm going to do estate planning, family law, criminal law, and bankruptcy. But when you opened your law firm, you needed business. So you went to your family and friends and said, hey, I started a law firm. And one family member came and said, hey, I'm getting divorced. Can you represent me? Another family member came, or a neighbor came and said, hey, I'm struggling with debt. I need a bankruptcy attorney. Can you help me? And before you knew it, you were learning all of these different areas of law. So you threw them on your website. But now the problem is that Gary's saying, you got to stop and say, okay, who am I talking to? And what is the conversation that they're having? And where are they having that conversation, so that I can know where to start with my marketing? And what that means is that you have to make a decision. You have to decide who you are. You have to decide who you're serving, so that you know who to have that conversation with. So if you can't choose a practice area, or even a niche within a practice area, you're already behind the eight ball when it comes to trying to figure out how to market your firm, because you're trying to have multiple conversations at the same time. We have a podcast episode that I released early on. It's episode 29, and we're up in the, I don't know when this is being released, but close to 200, if not past it. So this is a while ago, but if you go to profitwithlaw.com /029, or just search in your podcast player, it's called Why Choosing a Niche Will Skyrocket Your Firm. And you'll obviously see how I've morphed as a podcast host, and I probably sound less experienced in that show because that was a long time ago. But the message is still the same, and that is that if you want to be successful, you have to make this kind of decision. And if it doesn't matter what size law firm you are, you could have 20 attorneys and you have a few different practice areas, but you have to be able to carry the marketing for all of those practice areas. You have to be able to have those multiple conversations. And if you're early on in the process, then you need to narrow it down and you need to say, this is where I'm going to focus. Now, it doesn't mean you have to say, no, I'm not doing the other things. It just means I'm not advertising the other things. I'm not putting my efforts behind the other things. And if they come, they come. If I already know how to do them, I can serve those clients. But I'm going to focus all of my efforts in bringing this specific type of client through the door. And by doing that, you hone in on your marketing message. You're able to come up with your marketing strategy. But then when you're serving your clients, they're all the same. You're able to build systems and processes around it so that you can serve them all the same. They can all get the same experience, which can then drive your reviews and your referrals, which Gary said are so important. And it all works together in this harmonious system. But when every time somebody comes through the door, it's a new thing that you have to learn or reacquaint yourself with, and you're starting from scratch, it creates so much more work for you to be able to serve that client that you probably are not billing for, because you're like, oh, I can't charge them for learning on the job, so I'm only going to charge them for what I think it should have taken me rather than how long it actually took me. And you end up cutting yourself short in the process too with the fees that you're charging. So it's just a recipe for disaster as opposed to a recipe for success to say, oh, I do all these things. And often attorneys think I have to do everything in order to attract people, in order to look important and look professional. But the reality is that you should try to find as focused an area as possible within the geographic area that you serve. So if you're very specific to your local market, you might have to just say, I'm a family law attorney. If you're in a large metropolitan area, then maybe you only deal with, low income child custody cases or high net worth individuals going through a divorce or something like, you have to get focused on a very specific audience so that you stick out. You have your specialty. The people who meet that criteria are attracted to you because you're dealing with them specifically.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense too. Like when you talk about having an attorney focus in on a particular practice, there's a level of comfort, and let's go ahead and use the word authority from Cialdini's 6 laws. At the end of the day, if anybody was what would be an example, if we're going to need brain surgery, we want that guy, that surgeon that just does brain surgery. We don't want him doing podiatry on the side, right? We want somebody who just specializes in focus, because that denotes an air of competency that a general practitioner might not have. Having said that, I don't want attorneys to feel that there isn't an appropriate way to be able to diversify like that. But again, you need to be intelligent about the way that you go about doing it to remove some of the potential reluctance to go to a firm that may be perceived as spreading themselves too thin.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're almost out of time, Gary. It's been a great conversation. I'm sure that we could go on for hours.
Let's.
When I started listening to podcasts before the iPhone was invented. So I started listening to podcasts when you had to download it onto iTunes software and synchronize it with your iPod in order to hear the episodes. And one of the people that I wanted to listen to because I loved his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, was Tim Ferriss. And I started listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and it was a 2.5-hour show. And I listened to 2 of them, maybe 3. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I don't have time for this. Like, there's nuggets of value and information in there, but there's a lot of waste of time. And I just don't have time to dedicate 2.5 hours to it. I think if we went longer, people would drown in the bathtub because they've been sitting in there for the past hour listening to us, right? So we gotta end it at some point. We could always have you come back, but let me ask you two things. Sure. Number one, what is, if you want to leave the law firm owners who are listening to this, you want to leave them with one parting piece of advice. You've got years of experience marketing. No matter what level they're at, if there's one thing that they can that they should pay attention to, listen to, something that you can impart, that, hey, this is the nugget that I have learned in my experience, that if you would take away one thing from this episode, this is the thing that I want you to take away. And then the second thing is how can people follow up with you or stay in touch with you, or if you have something you want to share with them, what's the next step for them?
Sure. One of the things that I always like to do on an initial consultation is what I want to share with you here, because I always like to put money in people's pockets as fast as possible. I found that's a great way of making friends, right?
Yep.
So more times than not.
As a matter of fact, check your right pocket right now. I just stuck a wallet in there.
Okay. More times than not, there's low-hanging fruit, right? And what I mean by that is just some tweaks in what you're already doing can really have a dramatic impact. In fact, I tell people that when I launch a campaign, if I'm within 30% of turning a profit, I'm ecstatic, because I know with the tweaks that it's going to be a profitable campaign. So go into what you're already doing, reevaluate what you're doing, look for opportunities in what you're already doing before you look for something new. It's kind of like that story, Acres of Diamonds, right? And so that has resonated with me since the first time I started listening to that series long time ago. So that would probably be the best advice I could give.
Yeah, I love that. And for those of you who don't know the story of Acres of Diamonds, go check it out. Not going to go through it here, but what I will tell you is that I also had an interview today with Cara Vival, and in that interview, this same concept came up, and it's this idea of shiny object syndrome, being insecure with the decisions that you make, and paralysis analysis. Buyer's remorse. There's a ton of these things all at play with each other. But at the end of the day, if we would just come up with a strategy, stick with it, and keep at it, that's what makes us successful. So if you've already got something that you've implemented, you've already got something that you started working on and just haven't completed building that bridge, then focus there first and finish that and see it to fruition. Because until you do, you can't determine whether it was a success or a failure. Right? You can't decide whether that's the right thing for you or not unless you actually saw it through to completion. So, I love that concept of, hey, check your inventory and see what you already have in the toolbox before you go to Home Depot and start buying tools.
Exactly.
All right, Gary, how do people follow up with you?
Sure. So, I want to do something special for your listeners. First, if you just want to visit our website, that's bigmouthmarketing.co. So there's no M, it's just bigmouthmarketing.co. But for your listeners, if they want to go to bigmouthmarketing.co/profit with law, I have some information that I will be sharing with them that will put money in their pocket almost immediately when they implement. And so I want to keep an air of mystery, because the mind needs closure, and curiosity is one of the best ways to get people to explore. And I promise them, if they are not successful with this, I will compensate them for their time.
That sounds wonderful. I'm going to go check it out myself, bigmouthmarketing.co/profit with law. Gary, first of all, thank you for being a listener of the show. I'm glad that I get to accompany you on your runs in the morning. And and I do appreciate the time that you spent with us today. For those of you who heard me saying this line of 2025 came 5 years early in the legal industry, Gary's the guy who I heard that from, and I stole it from him. So just want to give the and he may have heard it from somewhere else. He wasn't sure, but I want to give him the credit where credit is due here publicly on the podcast. And this is, we're in a fairly new relationship of getting to know each other. And I think Gary's an amazing person from the little bit of conversation that we've had together. And I'm excited to continue my own personal journey with him. And I invite you to check out his marketing company and what he's doing. And maybe go and get some easy dollars in your pockets by going to that link that we shared. It'll also be in the show notes right under the description of the podcast episode in your favorite podcast player, or you could go to profitwithlaw.com, and all of our shows are posted there as blog post entries with an audio player right on the site. And if you found value in this episode, we would love it if you shared it with a friend. That's how we spread the word about this amazing show. Last but not least, if this is the first time you're with us, hit that subscribe button and make sure that you subscribe to the show so that the next time we release an episode, you get notified and you know it's time to queue up Profit with Law. We're here twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday is my solo episode, and Thursday is my guest interviews. We try to stick to that schedule, and we've been doing a great job with some amazing guests, just like Gary. So stay tuned. We'll see you again on Tuesday. Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.